Senator Carlson, who is making his way here as well. And I've had the privilege of representing this community since 2012 when I was elected, and prior to that I worked on as a volunteer in the Eagan Parks and Recreation Commission. So getting around in my community is something that's been very important to me. It's important to me as a mom and important to me as a representative of this district. It's so important that I have been the author of the Safe Routes to School legislation, which you'll get to hear more about, where we got it passed and got some funding for Safe Routes to School back in 2013 and have continued that and continued other bike and pedestrian safety funding at the state level. Transportation, more than anything, I think intersects at several different levels of government, and because of that, we have a number of guests in the audience today who are here to listen to you as well. And so I just want to make mention of a few folks who are here from ISD 196. I see, and I might not even get everybody, but I see our school board chair, Jackie Magnuson, our communications director, Tony Tashner, our superintendent, Mary Krieger, Dr. Trevor Johnson, principal of DHS Middle School, and anybody I missed, ISD 196. Oh, Dr. Rajkowski is here from 196 Foundation. Gary Husko is here. Craig Amundsen is here. Sorry so much, I knew I would do that. So, and I would say that everybody's here to really listen. In addition, we have from the Minnesota Bike Alliance, Nick Mason is here. From Dakota County, Commissioner Tom Eagan is here. Board Chair Liz Workman is here. The Dakota County Sheriff's Department is represented here. City of Eagan, I see Chief Roger Numa is here. And Russ Mathis is here. I did hear from the mayor last night. With my state blinders on, I scheduled this during a city council meeting, so I did have to give my apologies. But we took the time when it was available. So, in addition, I want to thank the additional people from MnDOT who are here to listen, Amber Dalmas and Molly Klein. I will tell you, I have been in frequent conversation with Commissioner Kelleher as well, and she's very dialed in and tuned into what's happening in Eagan. So you have the ears of a lot of folks, and with that, I hope that we can really have a great community dialogue about how we make Eagan safe. So what is this evening going to look like? Well, you get to hear from me first, a little welcome and some introductions of folks who are on the panel. The panelists I'll give both Senator Carlson and Representative Chair Hornstein here a moment to talk about their work in transportation at the state capitol. And then we'll hear some thorough presentations. First on Safe Routes to School from Jill Chamberlain of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield here in Eagan. Blue Cross and Blue Shield has been a long-time funder and leader on safe pedestrian, bike, and walk routes. And so we'll get to hear kind of what the new technology is, what the new research is, and where the success stories have been around the state and around the country with regards to safe routes to school. We're not the only community that's wrestling with this, and we have the opportunity to do some real learning, I think, from other communities. In addition, we'll get to hear from Tim Hinkle of MnDOT, and we'll get to hear what the Safe Routes to School program looks like as it's implemented through the state of Minnesota. As I said, we have been funding it through the health division for several years, and it comes out to communities in grants based on what communities want, and driven by community-based conversation. So we will hear more about that grant program as well. And then we will move into questions with you and comments from you, the community. I will have staff here roaming around with microphones. We have the famous flip chart that you can't have any meeting without, because what I'm really hoping we get is the opportunity to think about what we want. Not think about what we don't have, not think about what we, maybe there's not enough, kind of like, let's not talk us out of a good idea yet. I think we tend to walk into so many of these conversations with the thought of scarcity, like, maybe we can't. This is our time to think and dream together as a community about what bike and pedestrian traveling looks like in our community. For you, for your families, for your neighbors, for businesses, what do we really need in terms of bike and pedestrian safety in Eagan? So this is your time to think, and we're going to try to capture as much as we can in terms of what you want. At the same time, let me acknowledge, we are a community that's in a lot of pain. We are a community that has experienced a tragedy and a loss that no community wants to experience. My son is a middle schooler. I was at the school and saw the school response and the community response immediately, and we recognize this. And I will tell you that when folks have reached out to me as the representative of this community, we're hearing a lot of care and concern. That's what I'm hearing as your representative, and I want to pass that along. And we have had numerous conversations since this happened, and I believe ultimately that the real solutions and the best ideas are going to come from our community getting together and talking. And so I want to acknowledge the sadness, the grief, the anger that is felt in this room. I feel it with you. And that also is a welcome part of this conversation because we are together in our grief. With that, I would like to introduce the panel and ask each panelist to give a very brief introduction of who they are and why they're working on transportation and safety. I will begin with Representative Hornstein and Senator Carlson, and then introduce each speaker as they give up to speak. So I would like to just introduce Representative Frank Hornstein of Minneapolis. He is the chair of the House Transportation and Finance and Policy Division.
Is this on here? Is there a trick?
Bottom. The bottom.
Hello? Hello?
Here, do this.
I think this is better.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. As Representative Halverson said, my name is Frank Hornstein. I represent a district in Minneapolis, parts of downtown and southwest Minneapolis, and again, as Representative Halverson said, I chair the Transportation Committee. And I'm here because of my deep concern for bike and pedestrian safety. It's something that I've advocated for many years, and I think that, as Representative Halverson said, and she explained to me the circumstances that prompted this meeting, I think perhaps one of the ways we can honor Patrick and his family is to come together as a community and advocate for strong bike and pedestrian safety policies at the local, county, state level, wherever there's responsibility, because we have to make sure that this never ever happens again to another child and another family. And I also want to say that as I've traveled through the state and particularly the region over this last year, there are other communities that are having the same kinds of issues and are experiencing the same kinds of pain that you are. We have had a couple of pedestrian and bike deaths very recently in the northern suburbs. So we're going to be having a similar meeting to this up there. So we did pass legislation in the Minnesota House of Representatives to set aside $14 million for bike and pedestrian safety. That bill passed. Representative Halverson advocated for that and voted for that. Unfortunately, we were not able to pass it in the Senate, but not because of Senator Carlson and his party. They did support it. So we have to continue to fight hard for meaningful legislation. And unfortunately, so much of transportation policy over many, many years has been really about widening roads so that people can get to where they're going faster. And of course, that's created a lot of problems. And we have to underscore the fact that bikes and walking is a form of transportation. This is just not a leisurely activity. I know myself, I've given up driving for 3.5 years. People are too aggressive, people are too distracted. That's why Senator Carlson and I finally, after 10 years, were able to pass the hands-free driving bill this past session. So there is potential to get together on a bipartisan basis on this type of issue. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist now. So we have to have proper funding so that the infrastructure can be built for bike and pedestrian safety. We need more education. We need to slow down traffic We need to make sure that that these provisions are enforced. The Safe Routes to School program is very important, that be fully funded. There's lots of things we can do together. But I wanted to come down here to say that I strongly share your concerns. If a bill, and I trust that there will be legislation at the state level, whether Representative Halverson carries it or someone else does, I will guarantee tonight that bill will be heard in the House Transportation Committee, and we will do all we can to pass it, to make sure that this never ever happens again. Perhaps a fund very specific to pedestrian and bike safety might be in order. We'll explore some of those ideas together. But I'm here to support you and the community, and please know that you have an ear, and we will need you to come to the Capitol if there's legislation. You will be welcome in our committee in the Minnesota House, and I would love to have you testify and be a part of any problem solving we do on this issue. So thank you very much for being here tonight, and I look forward to hearing from you, hearing your stories, hearing your thoughts, getting your advice. Thanks again.
Thank you, Chair Hornstein. Senator Carlson, welcome. We're anxious to hear about your legislation that you've passed and other ideas.
Shall I be really brief so the average comes down? Well, I'm Jim Carlson, and I'm the state senator from this district, so welcome to Senate District 51, which I like to call Area 51. We have had some real emotions going up and down in the last couple of weeks here, and I'm happy to see everyone being interested, and I want to hear your ideas. This is something that we needed to do a long time ago. We're talking about a specific stretch of road that we have been looking at for years and just haven't gotten to the point of getting something done on it. And I'm hoping that we can get somewhere, and with your momentum, you can help us get that done. I realize that things take time to get done. I saw John and Heather back there. They're the people that actually initiated a project that Representative Halverson and I got done in 2017 finally. It took a couple of years, but that was to allow school buses to use the 8-way flashers when they do a stop in a right turn lane, which prior to that was prohibited. And like Representative Hornstein said, I was working on the hands-free cell phone bill for more than 10 years, and we finally got that through. Prior to that, I worked on something that was simple, was increasing the fine for texting. We did that in 2017 as well. We increased the penalty for a distracted driving incident or a crash where someone gets great bodily harm or a death. And that took, I think that took about 3 sessions to get that done. I also got past the child safety seat, and that was something that that took a couple of years. Believe it or not, there are good things that take time to get all the votes to get it passed and to get the language right, to get the right thing done. So this, I'm seeing here that I really have to applaud Representative Halverson, because this was originally going to be a cannabis presentation, and she rightfully upended and used her authority to take over this meeting, and I think it's the right thing to do. And I want you to, if you have ideas for your school zones, if you have ideas for our school zone, please come up and tell us about them so that we can get something done. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for saying that, Jim. I did have to overrule the majority leader of the House of Representatives to have this meeting, so I took his meeting away. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate all you guys being here. Next, we'll introduce briefly Tim Hinkle from the MnDOT, who will give a thorough presentation after Jill Chamberlain. So welcome, Tim.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tim Hinkle. I'm an assistant commissioner with the Minnesota DOT. I am a 35-year member of the Department of Transportation. Today, I'm a member of MnDOT's leadership team. In that role, I have responsibilities for helping the commissioner to develop policy develop programs that address the needs of this community and the many communities that exist across this state. The area that you're talking about tonight is just one of the areas under my purview, bikes and peds. I'm also responsible for freight, air, water, rail, transit. So certainly if you have any comments about any of those areas, I'd welcome those as well. But I want you to know that this area of pedestrians and bicyclists is an area that's particularly passionate for me. I'm a bicyclist myself. I live in the community just to the north of here, West St. Paul, and I'm a member of the MnDOT team. And frankly, this tragedy hits very, very close to home. I want to send my condolences to the family, and I want to send my sincere condolences to this community. While I'm here tonight to talk to you about the role of MnDOT in Safe Routes to School, a partnership that we can have with you in trying to address this issue, this is a huge tragedy. And it just frankly renews and re-emphasizes the commitment that I have to this particular area, as well as the commitment that the department has to working in partnership with those that we can to address issues like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can do my intro and fire things up because
Let's fire things up. Welcome, Jill. Before you get started, I do want to make mention that our city council member Gary Hansen has joined us as well. So another listening ear for our community.
all right, we're putting this right by you. Okay, I'll keep it safe. Sorry to move the room. All right, you can all place bets on if I trip. Okay, well, first of all, my name's Jill Chamberlain. I work at Blue Cross Blue Shield in the Center for Prevention, and I serve as the Safe Routes to School Network Organizer. I've been working on Safe Routes to School across Minnesota. It has officially been 10 years, and it is both, I know we have made progress in the state, and I also know when tragedies like a student being killed on his way to school doing something very basic, when that happens, I know how much I'm not getting done. I know how much I didn't get to where I wanted to go. And I think it's important for those of us in the work that we do to see this as we have to do better. We can do better. We're going to do better. So my presentation, I'm going to dig into some specific things all of us can be doing, not just seeing it as it's something that happens at the state capitol, because at its core, how kids get to and from the school comes down to all of us in terms of how we build our communities and how our schools operate. So I want to get really practical. I can tell you some ideas that are happening in the state and hopefully give you some prompts and nudges and let you know who's here to help along the way. So that's what I promise. But what's going to help me? I just want a quick show of hands. As a child, when you were in what I would call junior high, many refer to as middle school, how did you get to school? Did you take a school bus? Hands up high. I took a bus. This is me legit answering. Okay. How many of you walked to school? Okay. How many of you biked? All right. How many of you were driven by a parent? Okay, we got 1, 2. So let me tell you, just to set some context, 1969, 48% of kids walked or biked to school. In 2009, this is kind of our starting point when Safe Routes really got underway, we had 48% of kids, or 44, sorry, were getting driven to school by mom, dad, trusted adult. It's a complete flip, and that all happened in a couple generations. Now to undo that is going to take us some time, but it can be undone. There are multiple factors. We see the land use patterns, where we're putting schools, when we see consolidated districts, large school campuses, that affects how kids get to and from school. When we see wider and faster roads, that affects how kids get to and from school. District consolidation, school choice, amount of time on the buses. There's a lot of factors that have contributed to this, and it's going to be a lot of factors to undo it. So when this is the view outside of a school, we can do better. When we're prioritizing and kind of designing school settings where we're expediting how fast cars get in and out of a campus, we're saying to the kids that are walking and biking, you're next. Like, you're not, that's not bad. You're like coming in second to the cars moving through. Let me correct the way I just said that. If that landed for anyone really badly. And I'm excited, I think we're Facebook Living, so good. It's living on in the internet. So this is all good. But Representative Horenstein mentioned speeds. And I don't think we realize how fast we drive and the impact of how fast we drive. And a data point that I think resonated for me quite a bit is the fact that if you were driving 20 miles per hour and you had a collision, or if you were struck by a car or a person driving a car, you're gonna walk away from that. You might have a bruise, it's not gonna feel good, but you're gonna walk away from that. A car going 30 miles per hour, it's a 50-50, and a car going 40, 90% of the time, the person struck will be killed. And we sanitize those incidents in the language we use when we talk about a car doing it, and some, like pedestrian, bicyclists. These are all people. These are all part of a system that we're creating. So we can undo it. The other thing, because this is a part of the work that we do at Blue Cross, as we've seen fewer kids walking and biking to school, which is a great way for kids to get enough physical activity, we've also seen over that same trend line an increase in childhood obesity. So this idea that our kids are more sedentary is directly contributing to the shift in life expectancy for future generations. And again, we can do better. So I'm going to talk some basics. I'm going to get into a little bit of how we collaborate between agencies. There's things these folks up here can do. There's stuff the school can do, the county can do, the city can do, that you two can do as parents, you can do as a student, I'm guessing. We can do stuff. So, and I'm going to share some resources, and then we're going to talk about the priorities. All right, so Safe Routes to School. It doesn't live at the state. MnDOT has a Safe Routes to School program. That's not the only way to approach this. Anywhere where kids can walk and bike to school, anywhere where it's across the street, you know, and age appropriate. I'm not making kindergartners walk 5 miles. Anywhere they can walk to school, we need to encourage that, we need to support it. And where they can't, where it's not safe because sidewalks aren't connected, because maybe we need a crossing guard, maybe we need to work on education, we gotta do that, and we can do it. And again, there are pieces there. So Safe Routes to School exists at a school level, it exists at a district level, it exists in a city, it exists in counties, and it exists within a state program. It's also nationally, there's some stuff going on, but we're gonna keep it local. And within Safe Routes, there's these 6 E's. So we start with evaluation. I know this is a super exciting slide, but this is a student arrival and dismissal survey. It's a very high-tech tool. At the start of a class, a teacher will ask, how did everyone get to school? Walked, biked, parent drove. And then they track that information. We do this twice a year. We get a sense of how kids are coming, how they're going. It helps us start identifying what problems there are. We do a survey of parents. We find out what their attitudes are about this. Maybe you're doing an attitude survey with parents or with students as well. These are very simple tools that actually help inform what interventions are going to work, what's going to be the best investment of your time, of your resources. And this is something every school should be doing. And again, I would say as a starting point to really dig into what some of the challenges are, I would start with evaluation. There's also those of us that have worked on Safe Routes, we've developed some more comprehensive tools. If you want more information on hazard tool or an environmental assessment, I've got cards. I can talk about this for a long, long time. Happy to do it. So reach out to me and we can talk more about evaluation practices. Education and encouragement. Again, there is a treasure trove of ideas for what you could be doing. And again, the problem you're trying to solve is going to vary, but the first one I'm going to mention is what's called Walk Bike Fun. It is a curriculum developed to teach safe walking skills and biking skills. It's MnDOT funded its creation. The Bike Alliance of Minnesota, Nick, wave your higher. They administer it. They train teachers, PE teachers, health teachers, science teachers, any teachers, and community members about this curriculum. And so those folks can teach kids about how to go on a group ride, what are the traffic rules, where to go. One specific policy goal that can come at a district level is to commit to saying 100% of our students are going to be trained in Walk Bike Fun. So every kid, whether their parent taught them to ride or not, is able to access that curriculum. And we're seeing school districts start to adopt that as a policy. And you know, they're not there yet, they haven't hit 100%, but setting that as a goal is really important. So another type of program, again, that kind of helps change norms, helps move this conversation of to expect kids what like walking and biking is normal, is what's called bus stop and walk. And again, we're seeing this happen, Minneapolis has done this, and then we're seeing it crop up all over in communities, and it's very simple. Instead of the school bus taking all the kids directly to school, you identify a second location, a remote location that's maybe at a park or at an intersection that's adjacent to the school, but provides some degree of a walk, about a quarter of a mile. 100% of the kids get to go on that walk. You can allow for, if kids have mobility issues, there's ways to program with it. There's a whole guide. Bus stop and walk is a great way to encourage those conversations around what to expect and seeing neighbors out and seeing kids out. And the other thing is the schools that have used it, when they then study referrals to the principal's office for discipline on those days, those go down dramatically. Teachers will tell you kids arrive to school ready to learn. So many benefits. There's a whole list that I'm gonna let you know where to find of ideas. So if you're thinking what could work at our school and wanna dig in on that, again, I'm available to kind of coach you through some of these things. A lot of them are no cost or low cost, so it's not a question of financial resources. Okay, next E, enforcement. And enforcement is not simply giving out the tickets. We know our officers in the room are excited every time you get to give a ticket. No, not so much. No, enforcement is looking at using school patrol, which is students, or having crossing guards. One of the more innovative campaigns working with law enforcement is coming out of St. Paul, and there's a police officer in St. Paul who started the Stop For Me campaign, and he works with neighborhood associations. And what they're doing is promoting pedestrian awareness, and that drivers know that at an intersection you stop for pedestrians. And they've been doing this now a couple years, and actually within their initial pilot, what's really exciting is that researchers at the U of M have been evaluating the effectiveness. And what they found is there is a benefit. So the drivers that experience the intervention where the person steps out, they stop. If they don't stop, they get pulled over and they're given a warning. What they noticed is compliance from drivers was increasing. And better yet, it wasn't just at the intersection that they did the intervention. It was actually, they were seeing a halo effect at multiple intersections. So that's something, again, that when we are people who drive, that we expect to see a person walking. That we know that when we see that, we think, oh, I should slow, I yield to that person. So there's some strategies within enforcement and that are really compelling. Some folks up in Wright County have been rolling this out, and again, I think it's more of a street design that actually is similar to Eagan. So I'm really looking forward to learning from them and hearing what they're doing, so I'll pass that along. All right, so there's enforcement. Engineering. This is vital, and I will also say everyone goes to engineering. We're gonna tunnel our way or bridge our way to success. And what we know is that engineering alone isn't enough, and engineering without quality community engagement and hearing the voices of community members ends up getting really rocky, and sometimes the great project gets shut down. And so with engineering, it's really important to having these kind of listening sessions, understanding the unique needs of that particular school and the roads adjacent to that school. And then also, one of the up and coming practices we're seeing is the use of demonstration projects. Because, sometimes we'll build stuff and it's not cheap and it's kind of permanent or permanent for 20 years. So how about we can build stuff or try stuff with some paint, with some different kind of bollards. This is an example of a demonstration project where they just painted out extensions of a crosswalk to test it, to see, okay, what happens at this intersection when we make a shorter distance for the people to cross, so they have less time. We give them a safer spot where they can stand out and see cars coming, they're more visible to people driving, and test it before we do this whole redesign, figure out what works. So fingers crossed, some new guidance is coming out around demonstration projects for trunk highways and the bigger roads. Cities can do this now. If it's a city road, they can test stuff out and try things. And it's a really great way, again, to see what's possible. And the last point I want to make is around equity. That is our 6th E. And I mentioned that safe routes where kids can, we want them to walk and bike. Where they can't, we need to make it safe. I neglect to say that right now, kids are out there. Kids are walking and biking to school, whether it's an ideal condition or not. And so they're oftentimes kids who may not have the same resources in terms of income, they may not have the same access. And so really, we need to be stepping up and thinking about who are the kids that are already out there, how do we make this better? Just even if we don't see any more kids, how do we make it better and safer for them? What are the things we can do? And again, all of us have things we can do. So those are the E's. Here's the big key takeaway. Jumping in with just one is a good thing, but when you approach it comprehensively, actually, I think the idea of schools or districts having a safe routes to school plan actually takes the ideas and gives some sort of prioritization and some strategy, so that then you're not seeing, well, we tried it this one year and it didn't work. We're actually kind of building on an initiative and then seeing over time, and by over time I mean 1, 2, 3 years, you can start to see shifts in number of kids that are walking and biking. You start to see shifts in terms of behavior. The other benefits, when kids get more physical activity, and a little plug, they need 60 minutes. When they get more physical activity, they're more likely to get better grades. We see improved scores in math, improved scores in English. When kids get more physical activity, we see improved standardized tests. So it's not a nice to do, it actually helps us do the things we need to do. We also see when more kids are walking and biking, a decrease in injuries. There is safety in numbers. When those kids are out there, then, again, we're back to expecting it. And then I want to point out the last bullet here. This is like a little busy. But I want to make the point, you see benefits if you only do an engineering project. You see benefits if you only do education and encouragement. But you see a 31% increase of kids walking and biking when you do a comprehensive program. And so thinking about this holistically, it makes a difference. All right, how are we doing? Great. Okay. All right, so whose job is this? It's this person, it's that person, this group, that group. Guess what? It's all of us. So there is a role, and basically establishing a Safe Routes to School team at a school level, at a district level. There's examples of cities saying we're going to have a Safe Routes to School team. But having a team, what that looks like is you have someone from the school. If it's for sure a principal, maybe a teacher who's helping with something. Superintendents, wonderful pro-superintendents. You have representatives from the city. You have representatives from the county. You have parents. And I really think it's great when you have kids, when you tap into student leadership. You have law enforcement there. Everyone has expertise and knowledge and a role. The communities that are doing the best, that have jumped in with Safe Routes, they're the ones where they have their team together. They understand the role that they're each playing. And sometimes it's not just you read the definition of role. It's actually they get in the room and they figure out what they each bring and what they can do. And so that's in that relationship building piece. But they get their team together and they identify strategies. And then when things happen, or when there's opportunities coming up, what we see play out is, the school they've done some of the data, where they know where kids are coming from. And then the city, maybe it's a city engineer, they're saying, we know this road project's coming up. Actually, we can include in this project sidewalk completion. Maybe it's a change in the pedestrian crossing. They know, you're gonna hear from your city folks, they know what's coming up, similar with the county. And so they can put something out of radar and have a plan for it. But we need to be doing these other programmatic elements within the schools. The other piece I'll say, so I said I've worked in Safe Routes for 10 years. And candidly, I do workshops, and I try not to be judgmental. I notice the older I get, the more judgmental I'm getting, where it's like, I've seen too much, I know how this is gonna go. here's what I know, is that when teams approach seeking a solution, they will find it. They might not find it today, they'll find it and they'll do something, they'll have phase one, and some will work, some won't work, and then they're gonna keep going. If you have a team that lists out every barrier and just looks at what the other person or other group should be doing, it doesn't go anywhere. And it is painful to watch. I've been in workshops and you see it happen where somebody's just like, well, let me tell you why that's not gonna happen, and lists 10 things. And the more, it pains me because I know it takes a while to get this going. There's no fast, like, nobody's Safe Routes program goes 0 to, having 5 kids walk to 50% of the students walking. It doesn't work that way. It takes time. Every school I've seen work on it, it takes time. And so the longer you wait to start, the longer it takes. And so it's the metaphor of, when's the best day to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Yes, wouldn't it be great if we undid some stuff 20 years ago? We can't, but we can start doing stuff today. So I want to push to think about your role in that regard. Okay. Resources. 5 minutes. I've got 5 minutes worth of resources. I'm ready. Okay, there is a Minnesota Safe Routes to School resource page. I know, who needs a website and one more toolkit? You do. Preparing for this presentation, I went out there, I was like, okay, what's out here again? There's so much stuff. And I will say that probably the limitation is there's so much stuff. But there are things that help guide a school. There's stuff about teams, there's stuff about all sorts of programming. So I can make links available, and I will write up a little summary that I'm going to give to Representative Halverson that she sends out to everybody here, and that can include just where to look for those things. And I'm going to hang around here as well, and if you have questions, I'm more than happy to dig in. But there's so many items. But if I had to prioritize, I'd say, hey, there's a Winter Walk to School Day event in February. There's a kit from MnDOT you can get. It's a great way to engage parents and kids about how they're active in the wintertime. That's one thing to easily plug into. There's some resources. There's the Safe Routes Network. If you enjoyed this presentation, once a month you can hear me in webinar format. I know, it's appealing. Let me tell you, the last year is also recorded, and we regularly have technology meltdowns. It's fantastic. But in that network call, it's over 200 people, not always everybody on the call, but we pick different topics around Safe Routes to School. MnDOT participates and shares resources, so it's often a great way to get insider information about funding. Our next call is this Thursday at 10 a.m., and we're actually going to have the person from Wright County talking about their work with the Stop For Me campaign. So you're more than welcome to join. You'd have to email me. I'll send you the link. It's going to be great. Walk, bike, fun. And Nick and I talked ahead of time. There are a couple folks trained in this area. There are not a lot of people trained on Walk, Bike, Fun. You want to talk about a way to engage with students and parents, work with this curriculum. It's again, we're seeing really good progress with it. And it's a great way, again, to start before we can get the big changes. This is one of the tools to help us with the little changes. You're going to hear from Tim. Funding's available from MnDOT for Safe Routes plans. Applications due January 10th. It's like an 8-question grant application for our cities, for the school. It's not hard. Please, you could be resourced to do it. And if you don't get the grant, guess what? You can do the plan anyway. We'll help you. So, last thing. Okay, so making it a priority. I mentioned the whole kind of focus in on the barriers, it's not a problem. Because we all have a role in Safe Routes, it's actually really easy that none of us play a role in Safe Routes. I've done that, I see it. And so this idea, we have to make a commitment. And I contemplated ending with an idea of, hey, 3 things you learned, 2 things you're gonna share, 1 thing you're gonna do. But what I'm gonna ask folks to do, and it's the honor system, but for you, before you leave, write down 1 action you're gonna take. What can you do? And to write it down, and I mean, I'd love to know what it is, but really, look at it in a month. Did you do it? And that makes a huge difference. So make this a priority. Some tangible things, the curriculum, School districts that have a Safe Routes to School coordinator, that's actually a staff person that works between all the schools, not just a transportation director, but somebody who's focusing in on it. That's great. Maybe a city and county might help fund that position. I mean, I know it's not magic, but also money is where you place your values. So tell us where your values are. So Safe Routes to School district position. Do a Safe Routes to School plan. Start with some evaluation. Get the curriculum. Talk to your legislators. There are things we can do. All right. I'm taking questions at the end.
Well, thank you very much, Jill. I think I learned a lot, and I hope others did as well. We get to hear from Commissioner Hinkle next. I think that we're going to be handing off the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
I also want to take a moment while we're switching guards here to mention that Nick from Congresswoman Angie Craig's office is here. So she sent a representative to hear what you all have to say. I also want to give a thank you to Ian from my office and Lindy from Representative Hornstein's office. Without these two, none of this would happen. There would not be a working microphone in this room if it was up to me. So for all the smart people who know how to get things done, I want to say thank you. Turn it over to Commissioner Hinkle. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Halverson. Thanks, Jill, for that excellent presentation. Hopefully everybody can hear me in the back of the room. Great. Continuing the conversation about Safe Routes to School, what is the role of the Minnesota Department of Transportation in partnering with the Safe Routes to School program? Very simply, the Safe Routes to School program offers a key opportunity for the school district, individual schools, and the community that is represented here for a continuing partnership with the Department of Transportation, but more so the opportunity to keep our kids safe. What I want to do is to take you through a real quick history and then give you a little more information on top of what Jill has already provided an excellent background on what this program is all about. Next slide. The history is fairly long and yet maturing. The Safe Routes to School program started way back in 2005 and has been in place continually since that point in time. I believe over 780 schools have been impacted already by the proceeds that have been made available through this program. Some close to 50 million worth of investment that has been made across the state to assist communities and schools with all of the areas that Jill has already talked about in terms of the 6 E's. Next slide. The vision for the Safe Routes to School has remained constant over time. It's really a vision that provides this state with where all students are able to walk and able to bike safely, conveniently, and comfortably on any route that they take within your communities. This program has been in place to deliver programmatic areas for improvement as well as infrastructure areas for improvement. Jill's covered those a little bit already, but very simply, it gives us the opportunity to do things like education and enforcement, but also the hard side, where we can put in place certain infrastructure improvements. And the programs that you'll see in a few minutes cut across all of those areas and provide an opportunity for the community to address those through clear plans and clear opportunities for program improvements as well as for infrastructure improvements. Next slide. Let me give you some additional examples to those that Jill has already provided that have come from the actual investments in this state. Starting with the area that really fits into the programmatic investment area where planning funds are available for this purpose. The Walk, Bike, Fun area is one of those areas. And in this area, MnDOT with partners develop safety curriculum to support learning for safe walking and bicycle habits. MnDOT supports training of teachers and other community leaders to implement the curriculum with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. Walk Bike Fun is a K-8 pedestrian and bicycle safety curriculum developed in partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield, as well as the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Education, as well as MnDOT. Next slide. An example of where this has been applied is within the school district in the St. Cloud area in mid-Minnesota. The St. Cloud area schools have been implementing this bike walk curriculum with a MnDOT-funded bicycle fleet, which was awarded about 3 or 4 years ago. They reach students and families at community events, as well as very specific school events. The school district actually completed a plan just a couple of years ago. In 2013, the district hired a coordinator to work with 5 elementary schools to implement the education and enforcement activities with a blend of local public health collaboratives, and provided support for crossing guards as well as for purchasing supplies, materials, etc. through the Safe Routes to School program. The school district has also implemented remote bus drops that help to ease the congestion that was occurring in the exact proximity of the school, and also participates in walk and bike at school days. Next slide. Graduating a little bit from the planning side and the programmatic side to the infrastructure side, we have a Safe Routes to School example, which takes place at Meadow Lake Elementary School. This is here in the Twin Cities in the New Hope area. This is a demonstration project. Demonstration projects are short-term. They're low-cost, temporary roadway projects used to pilot potential long-term design solutions that improve walking, bicycling, as well as public spaces. The projects may include, but are not limited to, bicycle lanes, crosswalk markings, curb extensions, and median safety islands. In this case, the elementary school in New Hope was awarded the planning grant in 2016. That was complete in June of 2017. And the plan is depicted here and could be available to anybody if you'd like to take a look at that particular example. The school has existing safety patrols and was interested in building support for infrastructure projects, and was one of the first to be interested in this particular demonstration project. Next slide. Looking at a little more detail of this particular infrastructure demonstration improvement is a depiction, a picture of the situation before the improvement was made. Before the intersection was improved, you can see in particular the access and ingress to the parking lot was right in and right out. You can look at the streetscape and see that it is lanes of traffic with very minimal opportunity for pedestrians and bicyclists to be able to traverse that area safely. That, in the end, from an engineering perspective, was creating conflicts at the pedestrian crossing, automobiles trying to make their way in and out of the roadway, and causing congestion at that location, as well as a dangerous intersection for the pedestrians that needed to cross. Next slide. The after picture depicts the pylons in place that surround the color-coded area which marks a protected zone. It takes away, eats away at the traffic lanes, which has the effect of slowing traffic in that area, and provides a protected area for the students to traverse, and it provided for right in and right out only at that dangerous intersection of the parking lot, creating a much safer situation for pedestrians to cross at that location, and less congestion, and a much simpler example of how traffic would traverse at a lower speed to allow for the ingress and outgress of automobiles. Next slide. One additional example is one that comes to us from the Lincoln Elementary School in Alexandria, Minnesota. This was a partnership between the schools, the city, as well as local public health. The project came from an actual Safe Routes to School planning effort and created new sidewalk, streetlights, crosswalk improvements that had a similar impact, just a different approach to the approach that you just saw at the previous elementary school. Next slide. Before the improvements, you can see that there is no sidewalk. Students were forced to walk in the grassy area or walk on the area of the street between the stripe and the shoulder. You can't see it in this picture, but lighting is poor, and you can look at the next picture and see what the crosswalk looked like that supported this particular area. So if you go to the next slide, Jill.
That's it.
Thank you. The improvements that were made included the sidewalk construction, street lights were added, crosswalk improvements were made, including those that you see there for the disabled community, and at a cost of, it looks like, right around $270,000. Dramatic improvement to this particular streetscape. Next slide. So those are just some quick examples in addition to what Jill offered. Let me talk very quickly about the Safe Routes to School program and what's available for you currently, so that you can begin to look at some additional opportunities that fit within this area where you can continue your partnership with the department and with the federal government. Next slide, Jill. First, I wanted to make note of the importance of pedestrians at the federal level. The federal level is looking at this and has developed what's called the Safe Transportation for Every Pedestrian program, the STEP program as the acronym. They are developing the cost-effective countermeasures that have known safety benefits. It is simply a resource for you from an informational standpoint based on engineering studies and improvements that have been made across this country that have been deemed to be very feasible improvements that you can look at. This slide provides the information for you if you want to go to that website, and certainly the department can help you with access to that information should you be interested in any of those countermeasures that are being proposed through that STEP program. Next slide.
Oops, sorry.
Thank you. And finally, and directed at the Department of Transportation offerings, the Safe Route to School funding opportunities are a few at this juncture that are available to you, fitting in the non-infrastructure category as well as the infrastructure category. Starting with non-infrastructure, the Planning Assistance Grant Program. This is the funding source available for assistance in developing an overall vision for the community, for the school district, to understand what the needs are, where those needs exist, what the costs of those needs might be, to position the community to pursue the funding that's needed in whatever category of need that might exist. Boost grants is also an area to look at. This is available as an implementation funding source for the SR Safe Routes to School program. The planning program is funded at about the $300,000 level. Boost grants are currently looking at about $140,000. When we move into the infrastructure program, we're looking at first the engineering study grants. This is an area that will make available $500,000 annually in the next 2 years. This is for a consultant who does the work to identify some of those engineering solutions and prepare for the actual investment that's needed to be made in that infrastructure, as well as the demonstration program that I talked about earlier, moving forward, which will be new in 2020, making available just a little over $500,000 for those programs. And as Jill said, the non-infrastructure program of planning assistance and boost grants, as well as the engineering study areas, are currently in the competition stage, the solicitation stage. So if there is interest, there is still time to apply for those particular funding sources. Last slide. So that completes a very quick overview of the role of the department in the Safe Routes to School program, as well as examples that are available across the state that you can look at, and the status of those current programs that are available to you. I will have a handout that you can take with you that gives you a summary of each of those programs as well, so that if you need more information, you know where to go to get that, as well as what those programs are. With that, I'll conclude and go back to the table for questions.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, for that great background information. I get to again interrupt our presentations and introduce another guest. I see that Senator Clausen is here, former principal in the ISD 196 area, now representing the folks of some of your communities again.
Apple Valley, Eagan, Northeast Lakeville, Coates, and 5 uninhabited islands in the Mississippi River.
Do you know how much fun it is at the Capitol to be one of the few people who gets to say one community? so I don't have a list, but thank you for joining us here this evening. So we are going to move into your part of the evening, friends. And so we will have some folks available with microphones to take your questions. And so if you want to raise your hand, you can direct your question or comment to anybody's. And I was dead serious when I said dream. If you want to say, why don't we, say what your why don't we is. Why don't we set up a hot air balloon transit from one side of Diffley to the other? Why don't we? We can entertain all kinds of interesting ideas. And we can also say, I want to. What is that? Is that the hot air balloon? We can also say, I want to. I want to be able to make sure that, trust that my kid is going to get to school safely. I'm going to be honest. My kid was just starting to get his freedom, right? He just got his wings last summer, where he got to go on his bike to Lexington Diffley athletic fields. It's going to be a different conversation in our house this spring, right? And so, you can say your I wishes. I wish I could walk to the grocery store. So really think in those terms. I don't want us to limit ourselves in this conversation. And if you've got something on your mind or on your heart that you want to share with us, we are listening, okay? So with that, I see hands in the air. So I will get here is Lindy, here is Ian. I see one right there. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having this conversation. Where I'm stuck a little bit is that the community has been wanting this for a long time, and we've continued to be told at every level, we can't do it here. Who are we supposed to put the pressure on to make this happen? We've been waiting for this for many, many, many years. We've been given misinformation, we've been misguided. I'll stop short of saying we've been lied to, but it's becoming a little bit clearer. So I want to know who we talk to make this happen, and I know it's a team effort. The community has been alone in this. Where do we go from here?
Were you addressing that toward Jill Chamberlain or
Pretty much
anybody?
anybody.
Okay, put the pressure on me.
We're looking for
Jill,
help, we're
Jill,
looking for
yeah.
some help here.
Yep,
So, okay, so,
and you've got a,
oh, I do have a mic. I also have a loud voice, but I also noticed my hearing's not what it once was. So I'll use the mic. No, maybe not. Here, oh, that's the bad one.
that's fine.
Okay, so if a key part, and I think this is where actually I think having representatives in this room as well. I think the idea of having the folks at the count, well, actually, I'm gonna back up on it because I say more of the, we haven't done it. What's the it that you think should be done? Just so I know what you've asked for.
Develop a safe routes to school program.
Okay.
So that our kids can walk and bike to school.
Okay.
We've been trying to do this since my child is
Okay.
a senior now. When
Thank
he was
you.
in kindergarten.
Okay,
We started
so
talking about
to
this.
start with this, I think having a conversation with school principal, superintendent, and then in this case, somebody from Eagan, I'm gonna go with, it's getting the team together. It's saying, and here's, what do you want? So you want a program, what's in that program? What do you need in that? Is it looking at,
We can't get a school zone sign.
yeah, I
There's
know.
not one school zone sign
Mhm.
on Diffley or on,
Okay.
not one.
Like, and then that's, and so getting, well, why not? What are our, yeah,
The school board says it's the
Yeah.
county says it's the city, nobody takes
Mhm.
We have an
accountability.
inadequate busing policy that has eliminated the opportunity to have these discussions.
Could you repeat what they're saying
Oh.
so that everybody can hear it?
So the frustration, and I suspect folks may know, is experiencing that you're asking for things from specifically a school speed zone sign, things from the school, things from, and then saying that the county won't do it, the county's saying school, like it's that pointing around. Where are there speed zone signs for school zones in Eagan? Do they? Dodd has one? Why does Dodd have one?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's a county road too.
So I think the opportunity, having some of those questions of when you see, so I'm gonna go back to that approach. When you see it somewhere else, it's starting to ask those questions, why did this happen? What were those steps? You have been doing that. I get it.
We're literally, I think it's done every single possible thing. I don't.
Pinewood's a newer school.
Yeah.
Short of organizing a nonprofit group to fight for this, which is now what's happening. We've done everything
I mean,
you
well, and that,
suggested.
I will, and then it's like, we can have the revolt meeting outside. We can have the revolt meeting outside. But yeah,
How do we move forward?
yeah, but I mean,
as
it
a-
is
as
that
residents?
advocacy voice and expecting more from our electeds, expecting more, to have that responsiveness. And there are technical things that make it tangly, but it is solvable, and so, yes.
I've got it back here. I can wrap up. Or did you want to say something?
I can only add that I've tried to make clear which programs are available to you and what the timeline is for that. As a grant recipient in a process that can provide funding to partnerships, that's the avenue that you must chase to be able to put in place the strategies that you need to be able to receive the funding that you need to get the improvements that are necessary.
For safe routes to
For
school,
safe routes
for
to
that
school.
program.
But what about just a sign? What do they have to do to get a sign by the school?
So if that's a part of the Safe Routes program, you have to have a Safe Routes to School program in place. We
And
have,
who makes that decision?
that is a partnership of those that have the need. So if it's a county road, counties have an opportunity to discuss that with the school district and look for a partnership, if that's the case. It can be many partners that can be involved. It doesn't have to be partnerships either, it can be just one. It just takes somebody to put those proposals together and to help us to figure out jointly what those needs are.
I guess what I'm hearing is I'm hearing a lot of unhappiness and to be frank with you, I'm unhappy also. I was invited to a meeting in February, and we expected something to get done, and it hasn't been done. Now, I don't want to turn anything into a shame and blame, but I'm responsible as well because I didn't push it any more than what some other people that maybe are in control of this could push it. One of the things that I've been suggesting for quite some time, and I did look it up, I did a map, and I'm pushing to have a tunnel under Diffie. Now, that's one solution. There could be a crosswalk overward, or there could be a crosswalk, there could be a bridge, there could be something. But this has been a dangerous situation for years. My wife taught at Eagan High School for 25 years, and I took her to school a lot of times, and we saw how kids are running across the street. Kids are coming down the street nearby, you know, and I think that this has been known for quite some time, and we haven't done anything about it. And these pictures here that show a tunnel, I had to look it up. I did this in February, and I started working on it again a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's time that we really get serious and someone gets the rose pinned on them to do it. And that's all I want to do, is get something done.
I phoned a friend, can I come back with an answer?
Sure. You found a friend.
I phoned a friend, I did a, no,
She has friends.
I do, no, I want to offer one thing. This is not going to be very satisfying, but I also think I want to get to a step, because what you're describing there's more to tease out. And so one of the things, not because anyone pays us to do it, but there's a group of us that work on safe routes. We do little safe routes academies. It's where we can meet with you and other parents to try to tease out what it kind of comes back to, like, all right, so what's the rule that's making someone say they can't? And is it a lever at the county? Is it a lever? Is it a city? Is it a state lever? I think the best thing the transportation system has done, it's so intertwined, and there's different jurisdictions, so it's really easy to just keep people spinning around. So thank you, Nick, for reminding me. But take the card and email me, and we can talk more. I want to figure out the connections. Again, it's not easy yeses, but yeah. Safe Routes Academy.
We'll take one right now.
Take a card.
They have that.
I just want to remind the presenters that we did have a Safe Routes to School only half a mile away from this particular area.
Yeah.
So Woodland Elementary did have a Safe Routes to School project that you can look that up.
Do they still? After?
It's I don't know that it was a one-time.
Oh.
Safe Routes to School are a one-time project,
Okay.
and then you do another project and then another.
Got it.
And I just want to follow up, and we've got a couple more questions in the back, but on this, I think that you've asked a really particularly important question, I think is probably on a lot of people's minds, of, well, we haven't, seen the progress that we want in the past, so are things going to be different? And you certainly have my commitment to stay involved. And one of the beliefs I have about the transportation system in Minnesota, understanding how complex it is, understanding how many different layers it is, I want to create a situation where there's not going to be a round door. Just because we don't know the secret handshakes of all the levels of government doesn't mean we shouldn't be able to get access and get answers. And so I hope that my office can be a no round door place where you're like, I don't understand this, and I don't say, well, that's the county, so figure out the county political system. I'm going to rely on my friend Chair Hornstein here, who has all the expertise in transportation in the House of Representatives. And so that's the kind of conversation I want to set up from here on out. I share Senator Carlson's sadness, basically, that I didn't push harder over the years myself. Because it's a conversation that I've brought up, that's been brought to me when people look at a school across the street from their house and say, my kid can't walk there, it's not safe. And I've brought it to folks over the years, but I haven't said, I'm going to take this as far as I can, as opposed to, I have handed this one off. in the past to different levels of government. I'm not gonna hand this one off. And frankly, the conversation I'm having with different levels of government and different players, I don't think anybody else is ready to either. We have a lot of important work to do, and I'm not gonna let it go, so.
Oops, I am, who else is gonna?
Hi. I want to know why something so easy has been made into something more complicated than it has to be. I don't understand why it is where it is right now, period, regardless of whether or not somebody passed away. This should never, ever have been an issue. That should always be a crosswalk at Daniel, always. You know, I hear Mr. Hinkle give us some great solutions for things. I've already researched this online. I didn't come here for this tonight. So I feel like 15 minutes of my time was wasted. I hear Ms. Chamberlain talk about, you know, she feels us. It's great. No offense, I'm just really turned off by the corporate stuff. I really am. This could have been resolved the day after, the week after. Not maybe to everybody's complete satisfaction, but it could have been taken care of already. And if I have to go stand in the gap for kids this spring so they can freaking cross there, I'm going to do that every afternoon. I will do it.
So, did anybody want to respond? I would like to encourage all of the adults in charge in this room, and if you're an elected official, you've probably heard from me in the last few days or a few weeks, to put your feet on the street, walk these routes that these kids are walking, bike these routes that these kids are biking. We're making these decisions based on transportation needs and things like that, but please, walk these routes that these kids are walking to see how hard it is to get to school safely. I would also like to remind everybody that this is not just a school area. There's McDonald's, the Lex Diff athletic fields, Rita's, Cub, Little Caesars, Dunn Brothers, the gas station. All those places that our middle schoolers and high schoolers and elementary schools are using before and after school and all summer long. So this whole area is not going to be solved just by the safe school zone. And as Jill said, speed kills. Diffley is 45. Your numbers don't even go that high. Please, we are begging all of the people in charge, please reduce the speed on Diffley now, today.
So, I've been lobbying the city for a very long time for bicycle and pedestrian safety. And I'd like to say, or have everybody notice, that the city is crisscrossed by how many county roads where speed limits are 45, 50 miles an hour? Lexington, Pilot Knob, Lone Oak, Yankee Doodle, what am I missing? Diffley? Cliff, yes, thank you. And there are no safe ways that you can traverse the city without running into a county road. And when we go to the city, the engineers say to us, well, it's a county road, there's nothing we can do. We can't, sidewalks, or crosswalks don't encourage motorists to stop. And I think it's high time that the city go and lobby the county and say, oh my God, these are our roads, we drive them, our kids cross them. Why aren't you telling us how this road needs to be? The city should be lobbying on our behalf to make the crossing safe.
I guess I'd just like to chime in on what's being said on that point, because as I definitely see a need for the school areas, but going to the whole road theme and the whole thing about Dakota County, 45 is a suggestion, if I may. That means that people are going 50. Thank you very much, Chief New. I know that your people are out there, but you can't be everywhere. And 45 means 50, 50 means 60. You go out on the freeway, they have on and off ramps. It isn't just a matter of speed in these areas for pedestrians. It's the same thing for cars. I try and get out of my area in the morning in my car, and I'm seeing people coming down Lexington going 60 miles an hour. I'm pretty sure they are. And I have to tromp on it just to get out of my development. It just comes down to why in the heck does the county feel the need to be taking and running freeway speeds on city streets?
And if I may add to that point, one of the things that I've wondered about, one of the reasons I really wanted to make sure that we could get together tonight, and if we want to get together some more, let's do it, because it seems like the value around transportation in Eagan, for good or ill, has been, let's get as many cars through the city as possible, as fast as we can. And maybe that's not the city we want anymore, right? Maybe that's what, we engineered for 20, 25 years ago, but maybe that's not what citizens are wanting. And so let's think about redesigning for the way we're going to use our city now and into the future. And maybe it's not getting cars through our city as fast as possible. So, just a thought.
Do you want to use mine? Okay. After her.
Hi, I'm Caroline Kerner, and I have a related, somewhat tangential, but related concern around traffic circles. I feel like traffic circles expedite vehicular traffic extremely well, but they are not pedestrian and definitely not bicycle friendly. I'd like to flag for you an example at Diffley and Ron. As a driver, it makes me a little bit nervous, and I pay extra attention because I know there are pedestrians and cyclists trying to cross there. I have not put myself in that position, and I don't think I want to. I'm concerned about this, and it relates to safe routes to school because there are rumors of different locations. We live near Woodland Elementary, and I've called the city several times because I've heard rumors that there's a planned traffic circle near us at Westcott and El Reen, and the city assures me that is not planned, but I'm just trying to imagine me, my children, who are here with me tonight, trying to cross that at a busy time of day, and there's no, not mitigation isn't the right word, but there's no, anyway, the traffic does not stop. They just keep going. You just have to wait and wait and wait, and it ends up to be like a game of Frogger. And some of the traffic circles I've seen, although they have a median for the opposing lanes, it's not wide enough for a bicycle, and definitely not wide enough for a bicycle with a burly or a bicycle with a tag-along. We recently graduated at the age of 7 from the bicycle with a tag-along, so for many years, if there was a traffic circle there, we would be kind of locked into our neighborhood area. So please put that on your radar. I don't know how that relates to safe routes to school. I have not investigated, but I don't think they're good for pedestrians, for bicyclists. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jennifer McGovern. I wish that I could send my kids to the store and have them come home and not worry about them every second. I wish that we had barriers between traffic and our children. We have crossroads, railroad crossing to keep cars from trains. Why not to keep cars from kids? Kids aren't bright. We have to educate them, and I love this program. I'm gonna get a card. But Yankee Doodle, there's nowhere to cross except Dodd and Lexington. There's a bus stop on either side of Ivy and Yankee Doodle. People have to cross there multiple times a day to get to those businesses. The other thing is we have semi-schools teaching people how to drive. I've seen them take the signs down. It's scary, especially with our kids walking places. We have beautiful paths in this city, but to get to those paths, we have to walk through the streets, and people don't see us. It's not enough. And we want to know who's going to take the first step and do something now, because it's already too late. It's already too late. Somebody's kid died. A couple of kids have died because of issues around there. So everybody says, yep, we're leading the way, except the way's already trying to be led. Who's going to do something so we can see it tomorrow? Not next year, not next month, tomorrow. Because I have signs ready. We're going to go and protect those crosswalks. If nobody will put somebody there, we will.
My name is John Curley, and I have just a couple of ideas of why don't we, ideas that haven't been brought up. In terms of engineering, why don't we improve the lighting on Diffley?
Amen.
The lighting along that section from Lexington to Dodd is non-existent. So why don't we improve the lighting? And then in terms of education, and this is really one for all of us, but there's programs in schools that be involved in this. Why don't we improve the lighting on cars? Okay, this morning, driving back to work from a meeting that I was at, in deep fog, roughly 25% of the cars did not have their lights on. And I would suggest it'd probably be the same when people are driving in the rain or driving in the snow. You know, people, and I'm not sure why that is, Chief New, you know, and how do we educate the driving population to do that? Why don't we do a better job of promoting lighting on bikes? Okay? Why don't we do a better job of promoting lights on pedestrians? And that's not just kids, that's adults. I go back into my neighborhood, and here are adults walking in dark clothes, nothing reflective, and man, it's just an accident waiting for it.
Or walking a black dog in their black
jacket. Yeah, exactly. So in general, in education and engineering, why don't we do a better job with lighting?
Well, my name is Tom Eagan, and as I was introduced at the very beginning, I'm a Dakota County Commissioner, and I represent most of Eagan. And I was at the February open house that Senator Carlson referred to. And the reason there was an open house in February of this past year, or this year actually, was because we had an open house earlier than that last November, about a year ago this month. And the purpose for the February meeting was to try and work out some consensus among the people that attended the earlier open house. And the scope of the project at the time of the February meeting was improvements on Diffley and Braddock. I happen to chair a committee called the Physical Development Committee of the Whole of the county board. It's all 7 of us county commissioners that meet and make a referral, a recommendation to the county board. It was going to be on the very next meeting after that February open house. And you know, what surprised me about it is that at the open house in February, there were commitments made by the schools, by the school district, by the city, and by the county that we will continue to work with the neighborhood. And then all of a sudden I get my packet and I see that this is on the very next agenda for approval. It was going to be a relatively narrow scope of improvements on Braddock and Diffley. So what the county decided, with the blessing of the city, was to withdraw the approval of that project to broaden the scope of the project so that more could be incorporated, probably including the very area where this accident occurred. And you know, it takes 3 to tango though. In this case, it takes the school district, the city, and the county to all work collaboratively on this. And if you're going to get a school safety zone worked out, we already have, believe it or not, a dedicated school safety zone. I don't think most people realize there is a dedicated school safety zone in place on Diffley Road. The trouble is, without the school's blessing, we cannot actually reduce the speed limit. The reason we can't is because they recognize Diffley Road as a hazardous crossing. In other words, they don't allow the students to go from the south to the north. And if the students have to be bused from the south side of Diffley to the schools on the north side, then you're simply not going to receive approval from MnDOT for a school safety zone. So we have to work together. I will tell you, fast speed ahead from February, and of course to this accident, to the present here and now, I will tell you that yours truly, Tom Eagan, Commissioner Joe Atkins, Mayor McGuire, and Superintendent Krieger from 196, and of course Chair Magnuson from the school district, we will all collaboratively work hard to come up with a solution. We're already working on it right now. There's a lot of things that are going on that you may not be aware of. We're already talking about signage. We're already talking about whether it's legal or not, we don't know, but we're talking about coming up with some methodology of reducing the speed. We're talking about a number of other things. We are going to have a meeting. It's important for you to know that there will be another very important meeting on December 11th. And at that meeting on December 11th, we hope that we can probably give you at least some preliminary and maybe even medium level improvements, with a commitment to you that by March 1st, by the first day of March, we will come up with a plan that we believe will satisfy the safety concerns of this area. But it's, again, I just want to emphasize how important it is that all three jurisdictions, the school district, the city, and the county, work collaboratively together. And if we're going to have a school safety zone, we've got to have the cooperation and the approval of everyone involved. So, thank you.
Well, Mr. Eagan took a little bit of my thunder, because as a teacher in the district, my pie in the sky idea would be that I wholeheartedly support all the changes or the improvements for Diffley, more crosswalks, increased lighting, reduced speed, school zone signs, all those things I think would absolutely lead to a safer environment. But my pie in the sky idea would be back to what Representative Halverson said before about maybe returning to 20 years ago when some decisions were made and reevaluating those with today's city of Eagan, that the whole network of transportation around that school site maybe be reconsidered. So I'm happy that Braddock Trail is on the table, because as someone who drives that route every single morning, I can assure you that as soon as you turn left off of Diffley, Braddock is absolutely as dangerous for some of the same, but some different reasons. So I would hope that, I know people coming from the north have other transportation issues that are different or some of the same as me coming from the south. But the city of Eagan grew up around that Dakota Hills Eagan High School site, and I think it's high time to, I'm glad, I'm already planning going to the December 11th meeting, and I think it's high time that we reevaluate what the city has become around this hub that we all hold dear, and we want to make sure it stays safe. So thank you, Mr. Eagan. Thank you for putting this meeting together tonight.
Thanks, sir. Do you want to respond? Okay.
I've had a little bit of time to do some research on some of the things that we're talking about here. One of them, and I really feel like an idiot, because back in the at the time of the city council meeting, we all sat there wondering what it took to get a school zone assigned. Well, we found out overnight, in fact it was Commissioner Atkins who found out, that is a school zone already. Now, the problem with it is is it's not really a school zone unless you tell people it's a school zone. And so what we need to do, and we can do this, it can be done tomorrow, to put up school zone signs.
Let's do this.
As soon as you put up the school zone signs, there's another sign that can go up. And that one is, well, first of all, now if you know the law says that a fine for speeding in a school zone is automatically $25 higher. With approval of the county, it can be double.
Hell yeah.
So it can be double the standard fine, and that speed zone right now is 45 miles an hour. Now, we've had people, in fact, the fellow that lives on the corner of Daniel Drive, he actually went out and bought a radar gun because he was so upset with the speeds that he was seeing there, and he clocked somebody, this is his words, at 85 miles an hour.
I believe that.
I believe
I
that.
absolutely believe it.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, we're talking about some things that really can get some first, immediate effort. And I really have to thank the chief, because the chief put up their police radar unit up there the next day after that city council meeting. And I drove through there watching my speed, and and I think everybody else does too when it's flashing in front of you. So that's something that.
But why was there a cop there too?
Well, we want to
Right?
we want to put attention to it, and you can't have police there all the time, but you can have them there maybe at some of the most key times, and then once you have a police officer there, people are going to watch a little bit more. They're going to say, there was a police officer here yesterday.
Exactly.
Where is he today?
So if it's already designated as a zone, what is it going to take to put up a sign?
A decision. That's all.
By
Well, we need a
who?
decision. We want it.
Okay, you've got to remember that we have roads here that have school zones on them already and school speed limits. School speed limits are set by the owner of the road or MnDOT. Now, the owner of the road for a city street is the city. So if people go by Galaxy, that's a city street. And so they can put up a school zone there and I believe it's a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit there. And that's the city's decision to do that. For the county road, that's an arterial, that's a higher spec road. It's also higher speeds, higher traffic. That has to be done with a traffic evaluation or traffic study. And that's done by the county. The county gives their conclusions of their study, and then they go to MnDOT, and it's largely just an approval, that MnDOT approves it. And I think in this particular case, you're not going to have a lot of resistance from MnDOT.
But if it's already been approved as a school zone,
yes.
What's the problem with putting a sign up, like you said, so that everyone knows it's a zone and then they're held
When
accountable?
we're talking about school zone signs, there is no problem. That can be just a decision by the county to go there and put up the school zone sign.
But
It's the
why
same
in the
thing
last
with the.
month would that not have been done?
Pardon me?
By the study, you already know the problem.
Well, the law says you have to have a study for the speed limit.
It's like you're chasing your tail. It goes around and around and around.
Well, there are some things that have to be done within law. And this is what we wanted to do.
That's already a school zone. They've already done the study. It's already school zone.
I think
So
we have the
to go
commitment
fund you
from
and go buy a
commissioners now.
sign
And they're in front
and
of
dig a
you.
hole.
Commissioner Eagan has promised you, and I can tell you what I'm gonna do is, he knows, I'll call him up and I'll hold him to it. We're gonna hold these people to it.
It's been just over 2 years. How long is this gonna take?
It's done.
How long is it gonna take?
Yeah, it's done.
We just want to see something. You know?
So this is the other piece of complication, you guys can see the frustration, and that is that because of state statute, sometimes state statutes can be a bit of a mess and can muck things up. And that's when Jim and I and Chair Hornstein have to get together and say, if there is a counter incentive for us to lower the speed limit at a place where our community wants to see the speed limit lowered, and if that counter incentive is sitting there in state law, or if there is confusion in state law, which I think that there is based on Commissioner Egan's read and Commissioner Carlson's read and my read. So I've actually got an email this evening from MnDOT with an analysis of this that I can take to the county. I haven't had time to read it, so this is a constantly moving position. But as I've said to MnDOT, if the problem is state law, we're gonna change state law. If the problem is just a misinterpretation or miscommunication, we can take care of that as well. And so I think that where we are now is we have to have a very clear understanding of the law. My understanding of the law is that the study is done because the statute says that, and it's a beautiful thing to read state statutes. Crack open these books, they're not written in English. So that my reading of the statute is that once a community wants to designate a school zone, they do the study. Once their study says they can designate a school zone, then they have the power to change the speed limit. And that power is with who is with the road. So I sent that question into MnDOT to get an analysis, and we'll be sharing that then with all of the players. So.
But it is a school zone, wasn't it already said that it is a school
Yes.
zone?
Right.
Well, it's not automatic. It's part of once you have a study, then you can declare it a school zone. And then once you have it declared a school zone, the county has the power to change.
The city, the county, and the school board all have to put together their own.
It just the decision just has to be, the signs has to be changed. So, again, and as I'm saying, this is about, there are different interpretations of state law happening. And so I think, as Commissioner Eagan has indicated, that this is front and center on your agenda.
Yes, it is.
And we're talking tomorrow.
No, we're talking multiple meetings and.
Well, you and I are gonna talk tomorrow about what state law says,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because we have different interpretations, so we'll get that straightened around.
You're supposed to stop for a pedestrian in a crosswalk, and I see it all the time.
They say you're supposed to stop for a pedestrian.
Can we
even if
come
they're
back
not in
to
a
our,
crosswalk.
we wanna be sure that the people who were queued to ask a question get a chance. So, who was next in the queue to ask a question? Okay, great.
People were saying we need to talk to the people in charge, but we're in charge, so like, we need the government, you guys, to help us get what we need and want. I'm sure like taxpayer money paid for this building, and I'm sure we'd rather have it going towards like something to make different safer than like a light bulb in here. Like, yeah, it'd look weird if we didn't have one, but we'd probably rather have the crosswalk than a light bulb or like the paint. We probably would rather have it white or the private. So people have been trying since the year Patrick was born to get something at Diffley. Why hasn't there been something there?
You're absolutely right. I know I got to meet you at the city council meeting. Do you wanna remind me what your name is, your first name? Just your first name. Cabrini, yeah. And thank you, and I know you were a good friend and a great advocate. I asked Cabrini to run for office. So I hope you have that on your to-do list in 10 years, or 20. You're absolutely right, and I'm going to give you my apologies, okay? And I share your frustration, and it's wrong, and we shouldn't have lost anybody. And so from that, it went from being important to being essential. And there's not a day that's gonna go by between now and the day these changes that you're asking for get made, that I'm not gonna be talking about this, okay? And the one thing as an elected official I will tell you, and I'll tell anybody in this room that is in school, is that you guys get our attention because you're telling us what kind of world you want us to leave you, okay? And so it doesn't matter that you're not old enough to vote or that, anything like that. It is important to me to hear what kind of world we should leave you, and I'm taking what you're saying very seriously, and I apologize to you.
Hi, sort of came for a couple reasons. So I'm going to touch on two different points. One is that for us in our observations, especially what you're going to have is not only for the roads is in winter, in when the snow is plowed and the sidewalks are so full of snow, and essentially any person, including children or adults who use walking for transportation, somewhat then slide into the street because the sidewalks are pretty much impassable. I would say this is especially true if you're going over the bridges that go over 35E or go over Cedar along Cliff there. I can't speak to all bridges and things, but at least from our observation where we go. And I think that is something that ought to be prioritized, of something for a plan to get that done sooner. Now maybe they say, well, we've got another snowstorm coming and we'll just plow it, after it all adds up. But those people who are still walking on those, using the sidewalks and or getting into that street are somewhat at hazards. And again, from our daughter who does this from when she goes to work, will tell us that those drivers are not happy with her because she's walking in the street because she can't get through on the sidewalks where they're at. So this is going to be not only for adults, but also then for children who are trying to get through, because I would pretty much guess that no child is trying to bike to school during the winter. But this is somewhat another element of what has to be done. The other part, and having listened to this discussion here, which seems to go on, I think, lots in government, is we're going to have meetings, we're going to have discussions, we're going to come up with plans, but never eventually get around to implementing the plan. And I think that this has to then be used for having more priorities for actually getting something done, not just having the discussions. Thank you.
It's true that we have County Road Fast Tourist, and we've done everything we can to enhance the speed and what on those roads. They're just redoing my road right now.
We lost your.
It's a bad mic, the battery's out, we probably need another mic.
Redoing my road right now, Cliff Road. It's probably one of the most dangerous roads in Eagan. And at one time, my kids were expected to walk on that road to get to a school and stuff. But I think that the enforcement program in St. Paul has been quite effective, because I work in St. Paul and I'm literally amazed at drivers stopping for me when I get to the curb or to cross the street, even if I'm not in the sidewalk. We have a law that requires drivers to stop if there's a pedestrian in a crosswalk or entering a crosswalk. And I know that we have a lot of people passing through Eagan that don't live in Eagan. But sometimes, as a driver, I can't imagine anything worse than running into a pedestrian. But I think that increasing driver awareness does sometimes require a little bit of enforcement. And maybe a little more enforcement in some of our school zones wouldn't be a bad idea for a time being.
My name is Jason Ferdy, and this is directed probably to Commissioner Hinkle. My concern is the yellow flashing left turns at a pedestrian and bike crosswalk. No person or child should have to watch their back when crossing the road. If you notice right now, that flashing yellow is still going when a person crosses that crosswalk. Why is that the case, and why, as soon as I hit that pedestrian button, why doesn't that go red and they shouldn't be allowed to be crossing?
I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't answer the question about the technology, but what I hear you saying is that you want to change in terms of how that particular signal works to ensure that it notifies the traffic of a crossing individual and stops or slows those folks so that they're not in danger.
If I can't figure it out, then how can a child figure it out?
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Peter Vekkeldij. I live next to the family who lost their son 2 weeks ago. I have a number of questions here. Thank you for the panel for coming out here tonight. We certainly appreciate it. And the questions that I have, it's pretty obvious that there are a number of people in this room tonight that are very upset and are ready to do something. And if it's to them, they'll probably start yesterday. Now, that being said, and this is a question that I would like to direct at Senator Carlson and also to, I forgot your name, my apologies, Jill Chamberlain. I saw a very nice presentation about the safe routes to school just a little bit ago, and in a previous meeting I talked with Senator Carlson about short-term, mid-term and long-term possibilities, and these were some thoughts that we exchanged. Since a number of people here would like to start, like I said yesterday, how can we, if I understand this correctly, tie this Safe Routes to School program to the short-term solutions, because that's what we're looking for right now, while we're working and implementing long-term, like what you said, Mr. Carlson, like building a tunnel, for instance, in the long term. How can we tie these short-term possibilities into this Safe Routes to School program, if that's realistic? Thank you.
So where I would start, I'm going to talk specifically about Dakota Hills Middle School, but this lesson can expand to any elementary school, any other middle school, any high school, district-wide 196, or any other school. But for Dakota Hills Middle School, again, having a Safe Routes team that and it's people in the room that, and so you can't hear one person say, well, the county can't do this, or the city can't do this, but having them both in the room along with school leadership and the parents, and make your priority list. I mean, and I think you have it. I suspect you could hand me a priority list right now. And then you go through it and if you've got it broken down to the short term, what's the things we can do today, what's the thing that happens in a year, what's happening 4 years from now, and everybody leaves with assignments of who's doing what are you starting, but it's that coming together, having clear actions, come back together in 2 weeks, in a month, who's doing what, everybody's accountable to each other, and putting that together. So the short term is having, breaking it down of what can we do right now. I don't know the answer on why not the sign? And when I leave here, I'm gonna dig in and try to discover, is it an issue of by having the school zone and a reduced speed, it's not hazard busing, therefore it's a financial issue for the district. If by having, are we waiting on the studies? There's a whole, there's stuff, there's different points it gets stuck, and it's so unsatisfying. And I don't know that that's the case, and let's figure out what are the nuances in, what's the difference between, and for these different schools. So let's figure that out. So, and it sounds like you have a lot of folks, and I also want to be mindful, it is frustrating to hear, well, we'll have a meeting. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't get to the answer. But to your point, I'm going to come back to who's doing what, having those very clear assignments, who's doing what are we committed to, come back, what are we doing next, and then also having that view on the long-term things. What are the short-term steps, and if the short-term steps aren't moving you in the direction of the long-term solutions, then they're not the right short-term steps. I mean, that's the other piece. Don't get distracted. But that's how I would start.
I think he asked you too.
Ask me too. Well, actually, yes, we do have plans. I have the short term, the medium term, and the long term right here in a list. And the short, medium, and long term also has extra spots for other ideas. So I welcome, and I don't have enough for the whole room because I had to print it on my own printer, but these I will give to anybody that's interested, and I'll make sure that the county officials here, Liz and Tom, are going to get one. And this says what we can do immediately. And we can do things immediately, and we should do some of these things right away. And if there's a barrier, let's knock it down right away. And now I guess I want to go back again, that this is a county road. It's owned by the county. The county has authority to either ask from the state the approvals that are in law, or do them themselves. So they can do them. And interestingly, on the reverse side of it, I show 4 tunnels. One of them is a tunnel that goes under, that's planned for under Robert Street in West St. Paul. One of them is an artworks tunnel that's only a half a mile away from where we really should have had one. And I visited these today. And I took pictures of them, and I measured them to see how wide they were, to look at some of the details of them. And they are all on county property. So these are all county property. One of them was built so that horses can go underneath Pilot Knob Road. One of them is built so that people can go between the 2 halves of the art park. And one of them, I have no idea why it was built. It's done by Forkers Lake. You walk your bikes underneath Pilot Knob Road. We also have overpasses, that if someone thinks that maybe the tunnel is not the right solution, we have an overpass down by the Minnesota Zoo. It's it's a good example of getting people across McAndrews Road, which is another county road. So there are things we can do, but there are constraints. We always have to look at the constraints. And in this case, the constraints are the county owns the road, and I think the more we talk about it, the more it has to be that the county gets the roads pinned on them, and they're the ones that have to follow through with this. Get a project engineer on it and get it done.
But what about on Braddock?
Jim, so we've got 5 minutes left. I want to be sure that we've got a queue going, and I want to be sure that we get questions in, and then we can wrap up and maybe talk about some potential next steps, okay? All right, thanks. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is John Knapp, and my wife Heather here. We have a middle school child at Dakota Middle and 2 elementary students at Northview. I'd like to boil this, instead of boiling to solutions, there's a lot of emotion in this room, and it's rightfully so. And I think it's good and it's healthy to get that out. I do see a few things going on, though, both historically and now. I see leadership, and I appreciate that. I see leadership, people that want, Representative Halverson, I heard you say, when you talked to the young lady over here, you said it went from being important to essential. And I would add a word, it's also urgent. It becomes different, and leadership's important. There was the first question of the night, or the first comment of the night, was from a nice lady up here that asked, we've been talking about this for 25 years and nobody's done anything, and we've heard kind of echoes of that sprinkled throughout. And I would argue, and I apologize if this comes out negative, I try not to be negative, but there is a partner, which is a big word that the gentleman used, partnerships. He used the Lincoln School study, how there were partnerships to get that done. One of those key partners in the example he gave was the school district. I haven't heard from ISD 196. I know they're here, but they're not sitting up there. They aren't leading, they are following. And that angers me. I went to them with issues 2-3 years ago. They gave me the stiff arm. They said they didn't want to hear it. It was a child safety issue. It was a bus issue. It was, And I suspect that this was not the first time they heard things about Diffley. I don't want to hear about county roads. I don't want to hear about cities. I want to hear about leaders who are going to take action. I see people up front that they're speaking of action. School District 196 has been a stiff arm, and I'm tired of it. I'm a member of this. My kids go to school there. I've approached them, and they just stiff arm and don't do anything. And they are the biggest advocate. They're educated. They're leaders. They have huge voice if they would just stand up and say, let me link arms with you. In fact, let me lead you. Because that is not in my area of responsibility. It's also in my area of interest. Not just what's inside the confines of those schools. So please, School District 196, don't sit in the 4th row. Don't sit up there and be engaged and make it part of your strategy and not a piece of paper. Make action, not just words or just sit there quietly until somebody else has to change a law or somebody else, the county, has to change that, or it has to be this. Take the leadership role and do something about it. So back to your Representative Halverson, I dream of the day that School District 196 becomes leaders and not followers.
Woo! One more comment, and then we're going to wrap up.
Thank you. I heard you. And I'm Superintendent Mary Krieger, so I am the face of the school district now. I'm not familiar with your concerns in the past, but I absolutely agree that we are very aware. We have shared the concern, and as all of you have stated, we as school district folks we share the anger, we share the sadness, we share the frustration, and are committed to moving things along. We have been partners with the folks at the table and have been continuing to talk to our partners at the county and at the city, and will continue to do that. And we also share that frustration because I think this is just, as I have learned more about this in the last few weeks, I found it fascinating that we can't just go change a speed limit in the school. And so some of the way that we're working through this is to kind of find the best solution. I mean, we share that sense of urgency, of course. And we, our principals live this every day. Our teachers live this every day. Our students and families. So I don't know that anybody cares, the community, the school district absolutely is linked in this concern and a sense of we have to do something now. So what we're doing, to your answer, to your question, and I think I've heard that from a lot of you, understandably, what we're doing is just working on how do we kind of go through some of these to me it's sort of bureaucratic steps so that we can get something done now, because it has been that, is it the city, is it the county, is it this? What we've looked up is it says, the district can't designate the area without the partnerships. So we definitely are partnering on this to get the quick resolution. And it is sort of a catch, when I heard Commissioner Eagan talking, I'm thinking, it is such a catch-22, because we also do think Diffley's dangerous. And we do think that the kids that live back there deserve a bus ride to school. That we don't, so the way we have always thought about conceptualizing transportation to school is where you have neighborhoods designated as receiving free transportation and others that can pay or that are walk and ride, right? So putting all that together to make sense, when you look at it today, it doesn't. So I do think there are things that we need to do at all areas, but you absolutely have our commitment and I appreciate what you said. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. We need to wrap up. So it's 8:30, so we can continue conversations offline. Thank you. We're a little over 8:30, so I want to be sure we're respecting people's time and ending the meeting on time. And then if people want to have other offline conversations, I think people will be milling around afterwards as well, so you can get some one-on-one time with folks. So where do we go from here? We have a whole list of ideas, what ifs, why nots, this is stupid, whatever you guys said, to kind of boil down and bring to all of the folks at every level of government to say this is what we're hearing from people in Eagan. This doesn't have to stop here though, right? So what I heard tonight, to boil it down really quickly, is that we need action immediately. And that the number one desire of this community is to see the speed limit on Diffley Road lowered. Am I reflecting the community correctly? Okay, so that will be my first phone call after we leave this meeting to all of the relevant players, many of whom are in this room. All of the relevant players in this room, I ask you, and I believe we have dedication from decision makers in this room to not let anything stop us anymore. We have seen too many hiccups, too many tough things, too many speed bumps, if you will, that have gotten us off track and not helped us follow this through all the way to the end. That ends now. Eagan leaders, Eagan community, that ends now, okay? And so you've got my commitment, I believe you've got the commitment from the other leaders in the room to not let those hiccups stop us from making the kinds of changes we want to see to make sure that our community is safe. I thought I had everything in my head, I don't. Two other things. We want to be sure that we're taking this beyond Diffley and looking community-wide. I also heard that tonight. That is something that we'll continue to do. we will stop passing the buck. Do we have commitments from everybody in the room that we're gonna stop passing the buck?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm with you. We're done. We want our leaders who are elected and appointed to be at the table. We also want the leaders in the community who are using all of these paths and have concerns to be at the table as well. So with that, I am certainly willing to continue to convene. I am certainly willing to let community leaders convene. However you guys want to move forward. I can book a room and have some more time for us to talk and follow up on what actions we see after this meeting. If we want to reconvene in a couple weeks, do people want to do that? Or are we like, we're good, we've seen enough of you?
There's not enough.
Okay.
There's never enough.
You don't want to come back?
No, there's never enough of you, is what we're saying.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice. So yes, so I will book a room. I will set another meeting for 2 weeks where we do this again and we listen to you guys, okay?
And tell us what you guys have done.
Yeah, we'll tell you what we have done. I hope that this format worked where you guys got to talk and we got to listen. We have our transportation chair who's leaning over to me and saying, whatever bill you bring to me, you've got a hearing. Woo! Go Eagan. We have our senator who is given us our commitment. MnDOT has been a tremendous partner. Can't thank our local Blue Cross and Blue Shield enough for their expertise. And I will tell you, just to recognize that there are a lot of leaders in the room. The reason that these leaders are at the table is because this was really a meeting about what we can do at the state level. And so other leaders will connect with you as well and keep in contact, okay? I love this community. I'm so grateful to all of you for coming out. I hope you have a great night, and let's make our community safe.
Thank you.